If I could travel back in time, there's one thing I wish I could go and tell my younger self. There's one thing that if I had known even decades ago, would have saved me a lot of pain and suffering and even additional trauma. I don't have the key to time travel, but I do have one key piece of knowledge that I'm going to share with you in this video, that hopefully this is going to make your healing journey easier and safer and maybe faster. My name is Valerie, and I help people heal from the effects of trauma. I myself am a survivor of childhood trauma, about, depending on where I count from, 10 to 15 years into my healing journey. But if I had known, if someone had just, why don't they teach this in school? Maybe they do nowadays, but they didn't when I was in school. I was about 19 when I took my first, I was in junior college and I took my first yoga class. I lived in a very remote region of northern United States, and that was kind of like out there at the time. I know, crazy. But I found it interesting, and I took the class, and I was actually like doing yoga at home, practicing, when I had the weirdest freaking experience. I felt this energy entering, like rushing up through my body from my nether regions, right? Being 19, I immediately interpreted this as sexual. I had never heard of Kundalini. I didn't even hear of Kundalini until, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago. I know now that what was happening, my Kundalini was awakening, and there was energy from trauma that was trapped in my body that was rushing through my body. There was nobody I could talk to about this, nobody I could tell, no way, there was no way for me to know what was going on. And so I shut it down, I repressed it, I quit the class. I think I wound up having to take archery. I had to have a PE credit. But I not only shut that down, it was like the final nail in the coffin. I put the lid on my earlier life. From that point on, I changed everything. I thought I was insane. I wondered for a long time if there wasn't something a little wrong up here. But at that point, I concluded I was definitely insane. And what I was doing was making it worse. So I quit drinking, I quit smoking pot, I quit experimenting with other drugs. I basically kind of went the straight and narrow and focused on the answer in my brain. I basically shut off everything from the neck down. I was not going to let that kind of crazy shit happen again in my life. Point being that trauma is stored in our body. It's not a mental illness. It's not an emotional disorder. It's in our bodies. It is also in our minds, and it is also part of our spiritual journey, because those three things are intertwined. And this is the one key thing that I did not know, and it's taken me this long to figure out. It's integration. Integration means to put something together, right? It's also the same as the word integrity. Integrity means oneness. Something is one and whole. We come into this life as one perfect, whole, complete vessel of light, an expression, an incarnation of spirit. And then life happens. If that vessel takes a sharp blow, it'll break in two. About 1 in 5 or 6 people who experience a traumatic event like that will go on to develop PTSD. If you come into this world as this perfect vessel of light, and you get hammered away at and chipped away at and picked away at over and over and over again, little pieces chip off, there's cracks, there's breaks, there's pieces here, there's pieces there, and pretty soon, if it's not dealt with, the whole thing is going to go to smithereens. This is the process of trauma recovery that I have learned is you need to, there's no one answer. There's not one thing that is the solution. Everything is the solution. There are multiple modalities, healing modalities, tools and processes. And if you want to put that vessel back together, what I learned is to put myself back together. Maybe it's because my late onset at age 50, when I started coming back, my body started waking up, the memories started flooding in, I was having flashbacks, panic attacks. Through that experience, I was a bit desperate. I would do anything to help figure out what was wrong. I wanted to be whole. There's a part of me deep inside that knew that that's what I once was and that I could be again. And you can too. But you can't just do therapy. I've done therapy. I've done lots of therapy. I'm still in therapy. I saw my therapist yesterday. I love cognitive behavioral therapy, works really well for me. I've done lots of other modalities. I've even done EMDR, and they all have their place. EMDR has been shown to be pretty effective for people who have suffered a traumatic event. But there's too much trauma, too many traumatic events if you've got CPTSD. So how do you reintegrate? How do you put your pieces back together? A really good example of what I'm talking about is, I think it was a couple of years ago, I made a trip back to Minneapolis where I grew up as a small child. And I was taking a friend of mine around the neighborhood, showing like, oh, there's the house I lived in most of my life, and here's the creek where we played, blah, 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 blah. This is where my school was. And then we wound up driving around the city a little bit and going down to the lakes, because we used to take our bikes down there when we were kids. And as we were driving around this one area, I thought, oh, yeah, my grandpa used to live around here. I wonder if I can still find his house. Now, I hadn't been to that location since I was probably, God, my grandparents moved away when I was really little, maybe 4. But sure enough, we found the house, and I looked at it and brought on, talked the memories. And then as we were driving through that neighborhood, I don't know why I didn't turn on the main, 50th Street to go east or west. I kept going down to this dead-end street, and as I pulled into the cul-de-sac at the dead-end street, I looked down the hill at this park, and I realized, I just knew it came flooding in. Oh my God, this is the park where our family was playing when I was 2 years old. And when it came time to leave, as a 2-year-old often will, I was, being snotty, and I'm like, no, I want to keep playing. And I ran off and I was playing in the leaves, and my dad, because he was such a narcissist, he basically packed up my mom and my sister and all our stuff and got in the car and drove away and left me there at age 2. That was traumatic. That broke a piece of me off, and it got left behind. Now, if you want to think of this intellectually, in the realm of therapy, they would say that was a repressed memory, and that is true, but it was also, according to shamanic tradition, it was a piece of my soul that was shattered and left behind. And because of work I had done, I mentored for about a year with a shaman. Prior to this, when I got to the park, I got out of the car and I looked, and I was gobsmacked, like, how did I wind up here? How did I find this? I hadn't been there since I was 2 years old, but that was the place. And I did what I had been taught by my mentor, and I did a soul retrieval, and I could feel the return of that piece of my soul. So, oh gosh, now I'm gonna cry. It was so beautiful. So the point is integration. There's no one answer. Everything is the answer. You have to do everything you can. And that includes body, mind, and spirit. Therapy, cognition, metacognition, that's going to be another video. Being aware of your thoughts and choosing the thoughts that you want to think, that you want to bring that into your life. That's one leg of a three-legged stool. Body, working with the body, doing breath work, doing yoga, doing energy healing, which I personally practice and love. Many, many things in the body that you can bring about healing to release that trapped energy, the issues in the tissues, right? And spirit. There's a spiritual component, the third leg of the stool. If any one of those is like a tripod, if any one of those legs is missing or weak and it goes, you're down. Don't wait to suffer a crisis of body, mind, or spirit. I've been, unfortunately, through all three of those. My spiritual awakening began with a physical crisis that led to later, about 5 years later, a mental crisis, which then led me to, about 1.5 years later, a spiritual crisis. I don't recommend you go that route. And I'm here to share with you the tips and tools and processes and everything that I've learned on my healing journey. So I hope you find this useful. I hope you found this interesting, and I hope to see you again in a future video. If you enjoyed this, give me a thumbs up, push subscribe. I plan to be putting out a video about once a week and sharing more information with you. I want to talk more about metacognition. Again, not a sexy sounding word, but it's fascinating. And if you think that would be interesting, or if there's maybe another topic that you'd like to hear about, put something down in the comments, and I look forward to talking to you again next week. Namaste.